let's talk about flow. What is flow? Flow is this state of mind where you're utterly in the present moment, kind of like Ichigo Ichii that I talked about last time. One moment, one time, one encounter, no past, no future. We're going to talk about how to get into this zone. A lot of sports people call this getting into the zone, where you are so good that you don't even think about being good. And you can apply this flow philosophy throughout your life. The term flow is kind of coined by a psychologist, Mihai C. I'm not gonna try to pronounce his last name, but he wrote a book on flow, and it's an excellent book. I read it. I highly recommend anyone who's a psychology student or someone who's interested in well-being and self-help to look into the book Flow by Mihai. He talks about flow, and he says that any activity that balances challenge and skill is considered to be an activity that leads you into flow. Okay, flow, the best way to kind of describe it, and I'll kind of put a picture of the aspects of flow right now here. And the best way to kind of put it is you're not bored, but you're not hyper stressed out. You're not overstimulated, nor are you understimulated. You're kind of in this balanced state where you know exactly what goals need to be achieved, and you know the steps needed to be taken. All you have to do is put in the effort. So you do have to put effort. Flow is a state of mind where you put in effort and you see clear goals. Okay? So let's talk about flow, and I'm going to explain a couple of things I do in my life to achieve flow. If the water was clear right now, and if it wasn't frozen, you would have been able to see the flow of the water. But the idea of flow is to get into a state of mind that's similar to water. Just flow through, right through the obstacles and the rocks and let the fish go through you and still be serene and calm. So here are the different aspects of enjoyment, as Mihai would put it, okay? There's a challenging activity that requires skill, kind of what I mentioned about balancing boredom and overstimulation. There's merging of action and agent, essentially the idea that the dancer becomes the dance, the player becomes the play, the artist becomes the art. Kind of this loss of ego where you are so fully present that the act becomes your sole focus and your mind disappears. There's clear goals and feedback that I talked about. There's intense concentration. This is extremely important in the sense that you are utterly concentrated to the point where your mind physically and mentally cannot think of anything else but that action. Okay, and this is why you perform at your best ability, because you're perfectly concentrated. We'll go over the neuroscience of flow in a bit. I am a neuroscience student, so I do like to understand the biology behind flow. But let's just talk about the psychology and the philosophy of flow first. There's also loss of consciousness, not like passing out, of course, but you're not thinking about yourself. That's kind of what it's saying. And no worries about passing time. You're not thinking about how fast or slow time is going. You're just kind of going with the flow, okay? And then finally, it's a autotelic process, okay? Autotelic is an extremely important concept that suggests the process is more valuable than the destination. And this is, a lot of people get caught up in the end result and never really think about what is happening in their life right now. But that's the whole point. Your life is more valuable than where you're trying to get to. Of course, you want to have goals. Of course, you want to have dreams, and you want to achieve those dreams, but you don't want to miss out on the journey, okay? And that is what a flow state, according to Mihai, looks like, is these 8 different concepts. I'll kind of put them right here or wherever on the side. And I would say, I wrote a blog on this. If you want to check out my website, it's Satvik /bachelorcode.com. I'll put a link to it right here. And I wrote about all these different aspects of enjoyment. If you truly want to enjoy life, what you have to do is get into the flow state and try to get in the flow state irrespective of what you're doing, whether it be work, whether it be meditation, whether it be playing games, whether it be walking in a park, whether it be talking to people, any activity you're doing, if you can get into this flow state, you're balling. You're balling. You're straight up a master of your mind. Okay? No one can defeat you. I mean, I say this in a hypothetical way, but no matter how external circumstances are, your mind will be able to learn how to navigate through challenging situations if you can achieve flow. Okay? So let's talk about some neuroscience of flow. There is this network called the default mode network in your brain, and it is active, or it is excessively active when you're thinking about yourself. And what it does a lot of times is that it inhibits your frontal cortex, your prefrontal cortex, which is involved with executive functioning. And what that does is that it leads to rumination and self-referential thinking, and inhibits executive functioning, which is required for proper planning, decision making, and executing actions in an appropriate manner. Okay, so what you want to do in flow state is you have to inhibit the DMN so that it stops inhibiting the prefrontal cortex. So you're disinhibiting the prefrontal cortex. You're stopping the inhibition of prefrontal cortex. That's one theory. And the other theory is the opposite. And of course, these are theories, but bear with me here. We don't really understand exactly what's happening in a flow state. We do know that it is involving the prefrontal cortex, which is extremely important for executive functioning. But the second theory is that there's transient hypofrontality. Essentially, what this means, hypofrontality, is that there's less activation in the frontal lobes, not the prefrontal cortex, but in general the frontal lobes. And it's by Arne Dietrich, if I said that right. But he says that the prefrontal cortex is involved with executive functioning, but after a while, a flow state is achieved where your prefrontal cortex is less active because it involves habitual activities. You don't have to effortfully do something. Your basal ganglia and your substantia nigra, which involve dopamine and motivation factors, those become active, and they overtake the prefrontal cortex role. And what that does essentially is that it frees up cognitive energy. When it frees up cognitive energy, you're able to use that energy to perform the actual action, to actually put that energy into the senses rather than in the mind, because ultimately you need the senses to perform activity, right? So you put that energy into your eyes, which are able to pick up more details. You're able to put that energy into your ears, which are able to pick up more sounds. You're able to put that energy into making connections between ideas rather than trying to solve them. You know what I mean? So those are two theories. One involves the increased activity of the prefrontal cortex by inhibiting the DMN, and the second one involves hypofrontality, which is maybe an advanced state of flow where you actually reduce the activity of prefrontal cortex and increase the activity of your limbic structures, including the basal ganglia and the hippocampus. There's also literature suggesting that the locus coeruleus, LC, it's one of the main centers in the brain that releases adrenaline, norepinephrine and epinephrine, is more active during a flow state. So LC is usually involved in paying attention. Okay, when you're paying attention to something, LC will burst a lot of epinephrine, which helps you focus your mind. In a flow state, the LC is overactive, and what that does, it helps the brain synchronize its activity. Synchronize in the sense that your brain is working towards one goal rather than multiple different goals, and it's releasing in epinephrine to help you gain focus and attention. Okay, so these are all different theories. There's more research to be done, but really flow state is a scientific phenomena, and it's something that can drastically change the field of psychology and well-being. It's this idea. So let me explain to you how I apply these flow philosophies and theories into my own life. I'm going to call this the 5 gates through heavenly abode. Okay? I know it sounds cheesy, but these are the 5 gates that I use to enter the heaven on earth. And heaven in this case is just getting into the flow state. So I start the morning with yoga and breath work. Then I do Japanese sword arts or Iaido. Um, then I do Shakyo or Shodo, which is uh, Japanese calligraphy or sutra writing. Then I go on nature walks, which is called Shinrin Yoku. And then I end off the day with haikus or poetry. These are 5 different gates that I use to enter the flow state and train my mind to be utterly present, um, and tap into the heavenly abode, which relies on your own mind. If you have read Dogen and his book Shobogenzo, you will realize that the path of meditation, the very path of it, is enlightenment. You're not waiting for nirvana. In the very moment of your practice, you're enlightened. So let me take you through these activities and we'll go from there. So I've taken you through my day and how I use the 5 gates of heavenly abode according to me, which allow me to get into the flow state. You know, they involve different physical, mental, and spiritual aspects of improving your mindfulness. That is the key goal of all flow states. And so you can have your own gates of heavenly abode, or you can have your own gates of flow state, whether that be through basketball, going to the gym, or taking a walk like I do, poetry, calligraphy, or Shakyo. Um, but try to find some activities that allow you to take a step back and experience the reality at its subtlest level. That's very important. Today's world is involved with kind of dealing with the gross and the mundane, or kind of taking a step back and being on autopilot. But I encourage you to explore these flow states by being introspectively aware and focusing on mindfulness. That's the most important aspect of all flow states. Content creation has allowed me to improve my creativity as well. Video editing has really helped me, kind of put a story together. And I appreciate you guys watching that story and giving me feedback. So please, if you think that there's something that can be improved, whether that be audio or that be video editing or in general cuts, scenes, whatever you think, please put it in comments. I would highly appreciate your feedback. That would be great. But in general, outside of the 5 heavenly abodes, which I like to call, the 5 states of flow for my life, content creation has also helped me get into the flow state. So I hope I can continue to inspire other people who are trying to get in the flow state or want to learn about how to live a more peaceful life. More content according to that will come out soon. Alright, so next video is going to be about stoicism, and I'm actually going to have a special guest for the next video, so stay tuned for that. I will see you guys later. Peace.